She didn't scream when the acid hit her skin. She only looked at me and said, "You should have aimed for something important." Look, I am not going to pretend I was a good person back then. I was an arrogant, scale-headed idiot who thought his chitinous plates and 300 pounds of muscle made him the apex predator in any room. My name is Krell, and I am a Vaxorian, which, if you do not know, means I come from a planet where the gravity would crush most species into a fine paste before they could even scream for help. We are big, we are strong, and we have this lovely natural armor that can deflect most energy weapons. So yeah, I walked around the Galactic Combat Institute like I owned the place. And honestly, for 2 cycles, I kind of did. The Institute, for those of you who have never heard of it, is not some fancy university where you learn about ancient poetry and the mating habits of the Zentari slug people. No, no, no. This is where the galaxy sends its warriors, its soldiers, its future commanders, and tactical geniuses. You want to lead armies? You come here, you want to learn 17 different ways to kill someone with a spoon? You come here, you want to prove you are tougher than everyone else in the known universe? Well, congratulations, you have found your home. The Academy sits on a neutral moon called Talaxis 7, which has the benefit of being owned by no one, and having gravity that hovers right around galactic standard. Perfect for training grounds. The facilities are state-of-the-art, the instructors are veterans from a dozen different wars, and the student body, well, let me tell you about the student body. We had Krydons, these 8-foot-tall insectoid nightmares with mandibles that could snap steel beams. We had Thorians, rock people, literally made of living stone, who could shrug off plasma fire like it was a light breeze. There were Zentari, those pretentious winged aristocrats who thought their hollow bones and flight capability made them superior tacticians. We even had a couple of Hernak, these amphibious bruisers from a high-pressure water world who could breathe in any atmosphere and hit like a meteor strike. And then there was me, Vaxorian. 4 arms, natural armor plating that covered 80% of my body, and a jaw structure that could bite through damn near anything. I had won every single combat tournament in my sector before arriving at the Institute. Every single one. So when I walked into that academy, I absolutely knew, that I was going to dominate. For 2 cycles, I did exactly that. Top marks in hand-to-hand combat. Exceptional scores in tactical simulations. I even made the instructors nervous during live weapons training because, well, I was just that good. Other students gave me space in the halls. They nodded respectfully when I passed. Some of the weaker species, the Planori with their fragile exoskeletons and the Vesh with their wispy little frames, they practically scrambled out of my way. Life was good. Life was perfect. And then the humans showed up. Now, I had heard about humans. Sure, everyone had. They were from some backwater planet called Earth, recently discovered, recently inducted into the galactic community. The rumors were, well, bizarre. Some people said humans came from a death world, one of those nightmare planets where everything is trying to kill you from the moment you are born. Other people said that was exaggerated propaganda, that humans were just another soft species trying to seem tougher than they actually were. I took one look at the human file that circulated through the student network and laughed so hard I nearly choked. They were small, fragile. No natural armor, no claws, no venom, no redundant organs. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, and skin that looked like it could tear if you sneezed on it too hard. Their bone density was laughable compared to Vaxorian standards. They did not even have a proper combat-ready physiology. And yet somehow, some bureaucrat somewhere decided they deserved a spot at the Galactic Combat Institute. I remember thinking, this is going to be hilarious. The first time I saw Rebecca Hayes, she was standing in the central training hall, looking around like a tourist at a museum. She was tiny. I mean genuinely, laughably tiny. Maybe 5.5 feet tall, which put her at chest height to me, and that is if I was slouching. She had this dark hair pulled back in some kind of functional knot, and her skin was this pale peachy color that looked like it would bruise if you poked it. Her uniform, standard issue gray and black, hung on her frame like it was 2 sizes too big. She had these brown eyes that were scanning the facility with what I can only describe as casual interest, like she was picking out furniture, not preparing for combat training. I nudged Thorak, my Krydon friend, who was standing next to me doing warm-up stretches. Hey, look at this. That is the human, right? That has to be the human. Thorak clicked his mandibles together. which is basically the Crydon equivalent of snickering. That is her, Rebecca Hayes, from Earth. Arrived this morning on the transport from the Outer Rim. She looks like she would snap in half if someone looked at her wrong, I said, grinning wide enough to show all my teeth. What was the admissions board thinking? Did they lose a bet? Is this some kind of joke? Rebecca must have heard us, because her head turned in our direction. Now here is where I expected her to look nervous, maybe intimidated, perhaps even scared. Instead, her lips curved into this small smile. Not a nervous smile, not a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile someone gives you when they know something you do not, and they are waiting for you to figure it out. That should have been my first warning. I ignored it. You are the human, right? I called out, walking toward her with my arms crossed, all four of them, because intimidation is an art form and I was a master. Rebecca, was it? That is right, she said. Her voice was calm, steady, with this weird accent that made certain words sound sharper than others. And you are Krell, top of the class, undefeated in combat trials, very impressive. I blinked. She had done her homework. Yeah, well, I have a reputation to maintain. You though. I looked her up and down, making sure everyone watching could see my disdain. I mean, no offense, but what are you even doing here? This is not some basic training camp for the fragile species. People get hurt here. People get broken. She tilted her head, still smiling. I appreciate your concern, Krell. Really, I do, but I think I will manage. Thorak clicked again, louder this time. Manage? You realize the first trial is full contact sparring, right? No restrictions, no safety protocols beyond the medical drones. You could die. Could I? Rebecca asked. And there was something in her tone, something almost playful that made my scales itch. Well, I suppose that would be inconvenient. By now, a small crowd had started to gather. Training had not officially started yet, so students were milling around, and nothing draws a crowd like potential drama. I saw a couple of Zentari land nearby, their wings folding against their backs as they leaned in to listen. A Thorian, a massive boulder of a being named Grast, lumbered closer. Even some of the Herneks stopped their drills to watch. You think this is funny? I asked, stepping closer. I had a good 150 pounds on her, easy. My shadow fell across her entire body. You think you are going to walk in here and just, charm your way through combat training? Rebecca looked up at me, unbothered, still wearing that infuriating smile. I think you are trying very hard to scare me, and I think it is kind of adorable. Adorable. She called me adorable. The crowd erupted in hushed whispers. Someone, I think it was one of the plenari, made a chirping sound that might have been laughter. Thorak actually took a step back, his mandibles frozen mid-click. I felt my face plates heat up, which is the Vaxorian equivalent of blushing, except it is also the precursor to rage. You have got guts, human. Soft, squishy, easily removable guts, but guts nonetheless. Thanks, she said brightly. I like to think so. She turned away from me then, actually turned her back on me and walked toward the equipment racks like I was not even worth her time. The whispers grew louder. I stood there, all four fists clenched, watching her go, and I made a decision right then and there. This human needed to learn her place, and I was going to be the one to teach her. Over the next 3 days I made it my personal mission to make Rebecca Hayes miserable. Not enough to get me expelled, mind you. I was not stupid, but enough to make her quit, to make her realize she did not belong, to send her running back to her little death world with her tail between her legs. Assuming humans had tails, I honestly was not sure about their anatomy. Day 1, I made sure to position myself directly behind her during formation drills. Every time Instructor Vorn called out commands, I would lean forward and whisper commentary. Wow, your footwork is terrible. Do humans not have balance? Or is that really how you hold a pulse rifle? No wonder your planet only just got space travel. She never responded, never even turned around, just kept her eyes forward and followed the drills with this annoying precision that made my insults feel hollow. Day 2, I got more creative. During weapons training, I totally accidentally, knocked her rifle off the rack so it clattered to the floor. She picked it up without a word. I bumped into her hard. While she was lining up a shot at the range, she stumbled, caught herself, recalibrated, and nailed the target dead center. I switched her equipment with faulty gear. She noticed immediately, swapped it back and carried on like nothing happened. It was infuriating. By day 3, other students were starting to notice, not just notice, but choose sides. Some thought I was being too harsh. Others, mostly the bigger, more aggressive species, thought I was going easy on her. Thoric pulled me aside after morning drills. "Krell, maybe back off a little." "She is not rising to the bait," he said, his mandibles twitching nervously. "That is exactly why I need to push harder," I snapped. "She thinks she can just ignore me? She thinks she is too good to respond? I am going to make her crack." Or, Thorax suggested carefully, "You could just leave her alone and focus on your own training." I glared at him with all 4 eyes. He backed away. That afternoon we had open sparring in the main combat arena. This was the kind of training where you could challenge anyone, any species, any weight class. Supervised, of course, but brutal nonetheless. I watched Rebecca warming up in the corner, doing these weird stretching movements that made her joints bend in ways that looked painful. She caught me staring and gave me a little wave. A wave. Like we were friends. I stormed across the arena floor, ignoring Instructor Vorn's warning glance. "You and me, human. Right now, let us see if you are as tough as you pretend to be." Rebecca straightened up, rolling her shoulders. "You really want to do this, Krell? Because I have to tell you, you are not going to like how it ends." "Is that a threat?" I asked, leaning down so my face was level with hers. "Because threats require the ability to back them up, and you, little human, do not have that ability." She sighed. Actually sighed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "Okay. Sure, let us spar. But when this is over, you are buying me a drink at the commissary. Deal?" The crowd that had been forming around us laughed at me, because this human, this tiny fragile creature, was acting like she had already won. "Fine," I growled, "and when I am done with you, you can buy your own medical treatment." We stepped into the sparring circle. Instructor Vorn activated the medical drones and set the boundaries. Standard rules applied. Fight until submission, incapacitation, or the instructor calls it. No killing blows, but everything else was fair game. Rebecca took a stance that looked loose, almost lazy. I took a proper Vaxorian combat stance, all forearms ready, weight distributed for maximum power. "Begin," Vorn called out. I lunged. Rebecca moved. Not away. Toward me. She slipped inside my reach before I could grab her, and suddenly there was pressure on my knee joint. Not enough to hurt, just enough to make me stumble. I swung with my lower left arm. She was not there anymore. I felt a light tap on my back plates, right where the armor was thinnest. "Point," she said cheerfully. I roared and spun. Faster. This time. All 4 arms sweeping in a pattern that should have caught her no matter which way she dodged. She dropped flat, rolled between my legs, and when I turned around she was standing behind me again. "Another point," she said. The crowd was going wild. I could hear Thorak clicking nervously. Some of the Zentari were actually cheering for her. I was not losing to a human. I refused. That is when I made the worst decision of my entire life. I reached into my utility belt and pulled out the small vial I always carried. Vaxorian combat acid. We produce it naturally in glands near our throat, and we use it for marking territory, for hunting, for warfare. It was technically against sparring rules to use biological weapons, but I was beyond caring about rules. I was going to make this human understand what real pain felt like. I was going to teach her a permanent lesson. "You want to dance, human," I said, holding up the vial. "Let me show you what happens when you disrespect a Vaxorian warrior." Rebecca stopped moving. She looked at the vial, then at me, and for the first time her smile faded. "Krell," she said quietly, "do not do that. You really do not want to do that." I grinned. Too late. And I poured the acid directly onto her outstretched arm. The moment the acid hit her skin, I expected screaming. I expected her to drop to the ground, clutching her arm, begging for the medical drones. I expected tears, panic, maybe even a little bit of that human fragility everyone talked about. Vaxorian combat acid is not a joke. It burns through organic tissue in seconds, eats away at muscle fiber and causes pain so intense that most species pass out just from the shock. Rebecca did none of those things. She looked down at her arm, where the clear liquid was sizzling against her skin, eating through the outer layers with visible steam rising from the wound. The smell hit me a second later, that acrid burning protein stench that usually accompanies melting flesh. Her uniform sleeve was already disintegrating around the impact site, and she just watched it happen. "Huh?" she said, her voice perfectly calm. "That is definitely acid." "Yeah, okay, that tracks." The entire arena went silent. Even Instructor Vorn, who had been moving to stop the fight, froze mid-step. The medical drones hovered uncertainly, their sensors probably going haywire trying to figure out why the injured party was not screaming. I stared at her, my forearms hanging uselessly at my sides. What? What are you doing? Why are you not screaming?" Rebecca tilted her head, examining the wound like it was a mildly interesting science experiment. The acid had burned through the epidermis and was working on the dermis, exposing raw tissue underneath. It should have been agony, it should have been unbearable. "Oh, I can feel it," she said, conversationally. "It definitely hurts, like a lot. Maybe a 7 out of 10 on the pain scale, 8 if I am being generous." She flexed her fingers experimentally, and I watched in horror as the muscles in her arm moved despite the damage. "Yeah, mobility is still good though. Tendons are intact. That is lucky." "Lucky?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "Lucky? Your arm is melting." "Well, yeah," she agreed, "but it is just the upper layers. You missed the major blood vessels, which was nice of you. Honestly, Krell, if you were trying to incapacitate me, you should have gone for the radial artery here." She pointed to a spot on her wrist with her other hand. "Or maybe the brachial artery up here. This?" She gestured at the acid burn. "This is just annoying." The crowd was murmuring now, a rising tide of confused and frightened voices. I heard someone say, "What is wrong with her?" And someone else respond, "I do not know, maybe humans do not feel pain." "Oh, we feel pain," Rebecca said loudly, apparently having heard them too. "We feel pain just fine. We just have this fun little thing called adrenaline. It is a hormone our bodies produce when we are in danger, and it does all sorts of neat stuff. Increases heart rate, dilates blood vessels, boosts oxygen to the muscles, and here is the fun part, it suppresses pain response. Not completely, but enough that we can keep fighting even when we are injured." She said all of this while smoke was still rising from her arm. "You are insane," I whispered. "No, I am human," she corrected. "There is a difference. See, my planet Earth. It is what you call a Class 12 death world. Everything there is trying to kill us. The plants, the animals, the weather, the microorganisms, even the water can kill you if you are not careful. So, we evolved to be really, really good at not dying. Pain is just information, Krell. It tells us something is wrong, but it does not stop us. It cannot stop us. Because if it did, our ancestors would have been eaten by the first predator that took a bite out of them." I took a step back. Then another. My scales were rattling, which is something that only happens when a Vaxorian is genuinely frightened. You should be crying," I stammered. "You should be begging for help." "Should I?" Rebecca asked, and now that infuriating smile was back. "Tell me, Krell, what do you think happens next? You think you have won? You think because you damaged my arm that I am going to surrender?" She started walking toward me, slow and deliberate, her injured arm hanging at her side but still clearly functional. "Let me explain something about humans. We are endurance hunters. We are persistence predators. When we decide something is prey, we do not stop. We do not give up. We just keep coming, and coming and coming until whatever we are chasing collapses from exhaustion." "Stay back," I said, and I hated how weak my voice sounded. "You wanted a fight, Krell," she said, still advancing. "You wanted to see what a human could do. You wanted to test me, to break me, to prove I did not belong here." She was right in front of me now, close enough that I could see the way her pupils had dilated, the way her breathing had changed to something faster and more efficient. "So congratulations, you got my attention." She held up her acid-burned arm, the flesh still sizzling, still smoking, and made a fist. "Now let me show you what happens when you actually piss off a Death Worlder." The medical drones were beeping frantically. Instructor Vorn was shouting something. The crowd was in chaos, and all I could think was one single crystal-clear thought. I have made a terrible mistake. Rebecca grinned, and there was nothing friendly about it anymore. "Your move, big guy." That is when I realized something that should have been obvious from the start. The acid had not been a trump card. It had not been a winning strategy. It had been the starting gun. I swung first, pure instinct overriding my growing terror. All four arms converged on where Rebecca was standing, enough force behind each strike to shatter concrete. She was not there. She had moved, dropped low, and suddenly that acid-burned arm was slamming into my knee joint with precision that spoke of an anatomical knowledge I did not know she had. My leg buckled. Not broke. My armor was too thick for that, but buckled enough that I dropped several inches. Before I could recover, she was already moving again, circling behind me with footwork that was so efficient it looked almost mechanical. No wasted movement, no unnecessary flourishes, just pure, calculated violence. I spun, using my lower arms to sweep the space behind me. My right hand caught something, her shoulder maybe, and I felt a moment of triumph. Got her. I grabbed, trying to lock her in place so I could use my superior strength. She did not try to pull away. Instead, she stepped into the grab, closer than any sane person would get to someone who outweighed them by 150 pounds. Her burned arm, the one that should have been useless, came up and drove 2 fingers directly into the soft tissue under my jaw, right where my armor plates separated. The pain was instant and blinding. Humans have these things called nerve clusters, apparently, and they know exactly where everyone else has them too. My grip loosened involuntarily and she slipped free like water through my fingers. "You rely too much on your armor," she said, breathing hard, but steady. "You think because you are big and covered in plates that you are safe. But every species has weak points, Krell. Every single one. The trick is knowing where they are." I roared. A full-throated Vexorian battle cry that should have frozen her in place. Should have triggered that prey animal instinct that every species has. She did not even flinch. She just watched me with those calculating brown eyes, waiting. I charged. All 300 pounds of muscle and armor moving at a speed that had won me every tournament back home. She sidestepped at the last possible second, and I felt something hit the back of my knee again, that same targeted strike. This time I went down hard, my hands hitting the arena floor with a metallic clang. Before I could push myself up, she was on my back. Not pinning me, I was too strong for that. But her weight was positioned perfectly, distributed in a way that made it hard to get leverage. I felt her arm, the burned one, wrap around my throat from behind, finding that gap in my armor again. "Humans invented something called jujitsu," she said, her voice right next to my ear. "It is a fighting style designed to let smaller people beat bigger people. Leverage over strength, technique over power. You want to know the funny thing? I am not even that good at it. I am much better at Muay Thai." I threw myself backward, slamming us both into the ground with enough force to crack the arena floor. That should have knocked the wind out of her, maybe broken some of those fragile human ribs. She grunted. Her grip loosened for a fraction of a second, and I rolled, finally getting her off me. We both stood, facing each other across the arena. I was breathing hard, my armor plates rattling. She was bleeding from her arm, sweating, a new bruise forming on her cheek from where we had hit the ground. But she was smiling. Actually smiling, like this was fun for her. "You are not human," I gasped. "You are a monster." "No," she said, shaking her head. "I am just a product of my environment. You know what the average human goes through just to reach adulthood on Earth. Diseases that would wipe out entire populations on other planets we treat with pills. Injuries that would be fatal to most species, we walk off. We break bones and keep walking. We get stabbed and keep fighting. We set ourselves on fire accidentally, and our first instinct is to complain about the insurance, not the burns." She started circling again, and this time I noticed the limp. I had heard her with that backward slam, but she was not slowing down. If anything, she was moving faster, like the pain was fuel instead of a hindrance. "You wanted to know if I belonged here, Krell. You wanted to test me. So here is your answer." She moved, faster than before, and I barely got my arms up in time to block. But blocking was not enough. She was not trying to overpower me. She was picking me apart, strike after strike, hitting weak points I did not even know I had. The joints in my arms, the gaps in my armor, the nerve clusters in my limbs. Each hit was precise. Each hit had purpose. And each hit hurt more than the last. I tried to grab her again. Missed. Tried to strike her. Hit air. My movements were getting slower, sloppier. Panic was setting in. Real primal panic that I had not felt since I was a juvenile. The crowd was screaming now, but I could not tell if they were cheering for her or horrified by what they were watching. She swept my legs out from under me. Both of them this time. I crashed onto my back, and before I could move, she was kneeling on my chest, her burned arm pressing against my throat. Not enough to choke me, but enough to make it clear she could if she wanted to. "Yield," she said quietly. I stared up at her, at this tiny human who should have been easy prey, who should have been crying and broken by now. Her arm was still smoking. The wound looked worse up close, deep and angry, and definitely going to scar, and she was using it to pin me down like it was nothing. "I yield," I whispered. She held the position for 3 more seconds, making sure I meant it, then stood and offered me her hand. Her good hand, not the burned one. I did not take it. I just lay there on the arena floor, staring at the ceiling, listening to the chaos around me. Instructor Vorn was shouting for medical drones. The crowd was in an uproar. Thoric was clicking frantically, probably trying to process what he had just witnessed. And Rebecca Hayes, the human from Earth, the one I had tried to humiliate and break, just walked calmly toward the exit, cradling her injured arm like it was a minor inconvenience. I had picked a fight with a Death Worlder, and I had lost in under 3 minutes. The medical bay smelled like antiseptic and shame. I sat on one of the examination tables while a drone worked on my bruised joints and damaged pride. Across the room, Rebecca was getting her arm treated by Instructor Vorn himself, who apparently had field medic training from his time in the Krylox Wars. "You are an idiot, Krell," Vorn said without looking at me. He was a Thorian, so his voice sounded like grinding stones. "A monumental, catastrophic idiot." "I know," I muttered. "No, I do not think you do." He finished sealing the synthetic skin graft over Rebecca's wound and turned to face me. "Do you know what a Class 12 Death World is?" "Actually, no. Not just rumors you heard from other students." I shook my head. A Class 12 Death World is a planet where the environment itself is actively hostile to life. We are talking about worlds where 98% of species go extinct before they ever develop complex cognition. Earth is classified as Class 12 because it has survived 5 major extinction events. 5 times life on that planet was nearly wiped out completely. And you know what happened? Life came back. Stronger, meaner, more adaptable. He pointed at Rebecca, who was flexing her newly treated arm experimentally. Humans are the apex predator of a planet that tried to kill them for millions of years and failed. They have redundant organs, oversized adrenal glands, pain tolerance that borders on absurd, and a skeletal structure that can take impacts that would shatter most species. And that is not even mentioning their psychological profile. "What about it?" I asked quietly. "They do not stop," Vorn said. "When a human decides to do something, when they commit to a goal, they do not quit. They do not give up. They just keep going until either they succeed or they die. Usually they succeed. There is a reason humans went from discovering fire to building starships in less than 10,000 years. That is not normal, Krell. That is terrifying." Rebecca hopped off the table, rolling her shoulder. "It is not that dramatic, sir. We are just stubborn." "Stubborn," Vorn repeated flatly. "You had second-degree chemical burns and you continued fighting at full capacity." "Well, yeah," she said like it was obvious. He had not actually damaged anything important yet. Would have been wasteful to quit early. She walked over to where I was sitting and looked up at me. That same calm expression. That same slight smile. "No hard feelings, Krell. You wanted to see what I could do. Now you know." "I am sorry," I said. And I meant it. I should not have used the acid. I should not have any of it. "Probably not," she agreed. "But hey, at least you learned something today. That is more than most bullies can say." She patted my arm, the friendly gesture somehow more humiliating than anything else that had happened. "See you in class tomorrow?" She left before I could respond. Thorak came in a few minutes later, clicking nervously. "So, that happened." "Yeah," I said. "Are you okay?" "No," I admitted. "No, I am really not." I spent the rest of that day thinking about what Vorn had said, about Deathworlders and extinction events and species that refused to quit. I thought about how casually Rebecca had explained her planet's history, like surviving multiple apocalypses was just Tuesday for humans, and I made myself a promise, right there in that medical bay. Never, ever, underestimate a human again. Because if there is one thing I learned from getting my armored behind handed to me by a 5.5-foot tall woman with a chemical burn on her arm, it is this. Humans do not play by the same rules as the rest of the galaxy. They do not have to. When your planet spends millions of years trying to kill you and you survive anyway, you stop caring about things like pain or fear or overwhelming odds. You just keep moving forward. And ancestors help anyone stupid enough to stand in your way. Like I said at the beginning, I was an arrogant, scale-headed idiot. But at least I learned my lesson. Some of us do not get that chance.